Hello, good morning. Can everyone hear me? Can everyone hear me? Good morning here.
Good morning to you.
Good morning to you,
Chairman.
Good morning.
We are apologizing.
now.
It's because of network issues. But thank God everything is in order now. We can log in. We'll start the meeting immediately. We'll start the meeting immediately.
I need to say, I beg you, say, I don't think so. Then I said, it is not my father is not of the people who are part of our relationship. And I have some very deep messages on relationship. If anybody
Hello, Prof. Are you here? I'm waiting for the moderator to log in. I want to have your intelligence to start the meeting. The woman to log in, the moderator. But if Prof is here, let him indicate, please. Prof.
Hello. Hello.
Hello.
Hello. Good morning.
Yeah. Good morning. Is that the prof?
No, this is not Prof. This is Omodulia Adigun.
Okay, Omodulia Adigun. Can you please mute your system and so that we can allow the prof to make his presentation?
All right.
Thank you very much. And let every other participant mute their system so that we can get the prof talk, and then we give time after the presentation. We look into questions and answer. Prof? Prof, are you there? All participants should please give us a few minutes. We are trying to link up with Prof. Our chairman is chatting with him to try and get him. I once again apologize on behalf of the executive. It's because of the network problem we're having here at Secretariat.
So I now said, okay, that you shouldn't worry. I'm going to talk to you. When I come, we are going to. I told you, when I come, we all have to like I want to come. And the new one that I want to come, even from my mom. So these are part of the record that you can I'm like about. So
Hello, Prof.
Oh, hi, good morning.
Good morning, sir.
Good. The video doesn't show.
We appreciate your patience. We appreciate all the efforts you've been putting up to see that this program comes online. And our members are already waiting. So that we don't further take much of your time and our own time, we'll appreciate that you start your presentation.
Okay, that's good.
Thank you very much, sir. Please,
can you enable my screen? Can you enable my screen sharing, please?
Mute their system.
I'm disabled, so can they enable my screen sharing, please?
All right, we'll try and enable you now.
Okay.
He's disabled. That we should enable you.
Are you able to enable my screen sharing?
Yes, we have enabled it.
Okay, because it's still coming back and saying not enabled. It's still saying host disabled participant screen sharing.
You are the host now, sir. You can go ahead.
Okay. Okay, all right, that's fine.
Yes, we can see that.
Immediately one come and for the next 5 minutes. Who is this lady?
Is that okay?
Yes, we are seeing it. It's okay.
Right. Okay. Right. Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. It's such a pleasure for me to be with you, and I thank you for inviting me. And I do hope that we're going to have an interesting debate on the state of our economy, and in particular focusing on the CBN RT200 Forex program, and in particular examine the role of banks and export promotion agencies within this new program.
Please, once again, let our participants mute their system. We are hearing some humbug. Please.
Right.
Prof, can you go on?
Okay. Now, just to put a structure on our discussion this morning. These are some of the key areas we are going to examine and the evidence behind it. One is an overview of the macroeconomy. We won't go into much detail, but just share some statistics and some evidence. Then I will also take you through some sensitivity analysis around the economic recovery and growth challenges, some scenario. Then there's a medium-term expenditure plan that guides what we expect to see this year and the year forward to 2025. Then I will now look at the strategic context for the CBN RT raise to 200 billion program. I will do some scenarios, and I'll look at the profile of some CBN interventions that are relevant, and then examine in more detail the program framework itself and interrogate this framework in the context of who do you think you should be working with it and how we think the roles of the partners would be.
Go on, sir.
Right. Just by way of introduction, despite the global economic headwinds, which you know, the rising price of crude, 3 days ago, it was $95, and we know it's heading to $100 per barrel. The rising global inflation, which in cases is actually stagflation. Then the normalization of monetary policies and the rising monetary policy rates. And you've seen the announcement by US Federal Reserve Bank that by early next month, they're going to raise rates. Then there are rising debt crisis and turbulence in the emerging market. And this is simply because we now have to start paying back all the money we borrowed in 2020 to fight COVID. Then we also see that there's continuing COVID variants coming in and still disrupting the supply chain. It's still ongoing because it's the human beings that are carrying this virus, and many people don't want to vaccinate. Now you have global insecurity, as you know, even watching Russia and Ukraine shaping up for a showdown, as well as other geopolitical tensions in the Middle East and elsewhere in the Asia continent. We also seen another disturbing one, which is China's economy slowing down and aggravated by the property debt crisis. Now, Nigerian economy has jumped out of recession in just in December 2020. And this was only possible because of the quantitative monetary and fiscal policy responses that came in, including, of course, a higher order of targeting of CBN domestic finance interventions at the real sectors of the economy. I think what we're going to do is to examine the evidence, and the evidence at the global level, macro level, and meso level. What we may not have time to do is to look at the micro level, which is at the level of firms. We may not have time to go into that. Now, well, let's begin with the many dreams of Nigeria. Let's look at many dreams of Nigeria. You remember, you are very, very familiar with the 2010 dream that didn't take off. And we saw the Vision 2020 that says that we will be able to go to $600 billion. And that makes us the 20th largest economy. And as a matter of fact, actually, by October, November 2014, Nigeria actually got $575 billion GDP, but almost shortly afterwards collapsed to $330 billion because of the crash in the oil price. But those notwithstanding, we have other visions from the work of the PricewaterhouseCoopers, which they do also for Africa, under the auspices of Africa Continental Free Trade. So suggesting that Nigerian GDP might rise to 1.64 trillion by 2030 against a population of 300 million people, and that by 2050, we might actually hit 6.4 trillion with a population of 450 million, making us the 10th largest economy in the world. Now, so these are dreams that we're all having. But then the National Development Plan that has just been launched, when you look at the arithmetic in there, it supposes that on dollar terms, we may be growing the economy at 5%, which means that if you look at what it is today, if it goes on, but we are looking at dollar, we might hit about $600 billion by 2025. That's what it says if you look at those figures. But that also tells you that we've gone around a full circle. In 2010, we visioned that we will get to 600 billion by 2020. Now we are gone back. We are going to envision to get back to the same 600 billion by 2025. That's life for you. Now, this aspect is quite important, actually. Let's have a look at that. What we have here.
Prof, we are with you. Prof. Prof. Hello, Prof. So is this? It's a network. Prof. It's calling.
We can see your screen, but we can't hear you. Are you muted? I see here that Prof is muted, so you can mute from your end.
I think it's back. It's from here. Sorry, Prof. I think we are having some issues here.
Okay, then let me go on.
Yes. Hello, Prof.
Okay. All right. Okay. I think I've been unmuted now.
All right, sir.
Oh dear. Okay, so if we look at the sensitivity analysis, if you look at the base case is $80 at 2022. If you look at that, is if you look at the middle of this chart, table. The base case is $80, and at this $80, and our production volume is 1.7. We kept it all steady at 1.7 million barrels a day. Of course, that is lower than the actual. The actual is actually lower than this. Now, what it means in effect is that the real GDP will drop, will grow to 22.9%, and the exchange rate will be 4.65, down to inflation at 12.5, and then policy rates at 11. So that is the best scenario. But where are we today? We are at $95 per barrel. Our production volume is not 1.7, it's less than that. And then so what you would be expecting should be between 4.7% real growth and 3.5% real growth. Of course, we ended yesterday with 3.4, which is great news on our GDP release yesterday. We completed last year at 3.4, but for the last quarter was 3.9. So it was great. So it tended to reflect but when you look at other particulars like the Naira exchange rate, where the official rate is far from here, and the inflation is far from 11.7, is about 15.6, and then the policy rate is 11.5, is unchanged at that. So what am I saying? The account balances, if you look at the current account balance, is saying 14.9, but that is what I'm trying to say, that these are some macroeconomic variables that are built on the price of this crude. And the reality is that these figures do not match as you would expect. Okay, this modeling assumes that this money, when they come in from crude oil purchase, will enter into the system to be able to increase the foreign reserve, will be able to be available for disbursement. The fact of the matter is that about $3 billion every month that we would have been expecting from NNPC to enter the CBN system hasn't materialized over the whole 1 year. The whole of last year, it didn't come. So how do you expect this kind of modeling to happen when we don't even have the money coming? What has happened is that NNPC did a direct swap deal with the refiners of the petrol. So it just sends them crude and receive the PMS in exchange. And whatever is left, the change left, they used to subsidize and then send the governors back empty-handed. So, and the CBN doesn't receive the dollars that we're expecting to receive. It just wants to show you something that it doesn't always work the way we think it will. Now, if you look at the GDP figures, you could see how the big drop was in 2020, and then we got out. Immediately we got out, we now began to cruise.
I don't want noise.
Then let's see the other variables. Now these are the primary industries, the agriculture, the primary agriculture, industry, and services. If you notice these figures, the services are cruising at a high level. You can see it at 49%, but yesterday it went back, services went back to 55%. You see the struggle between agriculture and manufacturing. And yesterday, agriculture came back at 26%, and then manufacturing went down to 18%, which is absolutely low. I haven't seen that low number for a very long time. Then this is the most interesting one from the result of yesterday. The most interesting one is that when you look at oil and non-oil components of GDP, you've seen that the non-oil has moved to as high as 95%, while the oil for the first time has gone down from 9.5%. Even the last quarter, the third quarter was 7.49%, and now yesterday it came down to just over 5.2%. I've never seen oil come down to about 5%. Now, it sends two messages to us. It tells us two things. One, that the economy is diversifying more than we give credit to the economy. That's number one. Then number two, when you look at the GDP rates, you see that the non-oil part of the GDP is what is driving the growth. The non-oil is leading by 4.73% growth, and that 4.37% compared to -8% of the oil. So the growth is being driven by non-oil, and that makes the discussion of today extremely relevant, because we are going to be looking at a non-oil strategy to frontal attack to the issue of forex. So that's what we are going to be discussing today. But that is actually means that our economy is getting more resilient. In other words, if you look at the budget of the government, the contribution of the oil to the government's budget has been dropping consistently from 60% to 50%, now to 40-something%, and they are hoping that it will go down to 35%. Now, at 35%, it then means that if we have an exogenic shock on the oil revenue, 35% dropping it to half will still not sufficient to draw us into the recession. So that is one great message there. So we have two things going now. One is that there's an inflection on revenue, and then secondly, we are now having more resilience. So the economy is getting far more diversified than all of us give credits to, but also we are getting more resilient economy. And if we can have this push and push it well, it means that we will in fact be able to address the major discrepancy, or what I call mismatch, between the request for forex in our economy and the supply of forex to our economy. There's a big gap between the two, and we are not anywhere near closing that gap. But this program that we are going to discuss today gives us a chance that we can actually do that. And that means that once we've achieved that level where we can say, okay, we have enough to pay for the things we are requesting, then you can say, okay, float the naira. You can go anywhere you want, because the banks are now selling their own. The banks are working hard to earn their own forex. CBN may or may not, by the end of the year, I don't know, they may decide that, okay, banks, I think we've come to a long way. You can go your own way and raise your own forex and supply. So that kind of situation is not an impossible position. That we might come to that situation, but we're now in a better position to aspire to do that. Now, the next area to look at is inflation. Now, the pervasive impact of insecurity on our forex, and forex, of course, and price stability. These two are structural factors. Look at what insecurity has done. Insecurity means that we can't have our way in many variables, like agriculture. It has decimated the plans to increase agriculture naturally. So we now have a shrinkage of our ecological footprint, driving many of the women to IDP camps. Why is that important? According to Africa Union, in Malabo Declaration in 2014, said that 80% of the primary food, are grown by women. 80% of primary processing, I'm talking about gari and all that of food, is done by women, and 80% of the retailing of this food in rural areas and all is also done by women. When many of those can't go out to plant their crops or harvest their crops, and a lot of them are in the IDP camp, it spells enough danger to us. So, and then of course, we think we are feeding 200 million people. We're actually feeding 300 million people, because with the Chad and the Niger, Mali, all those countries up on our northern frontiers are hugely depending on us, on our agroecology, to supply them the grains. So we have this triple problem, that we have shortage of labor force in that area. We have conflicts pushing back on our agroecology, and then we have demand that we are struggling to contain. So in that, even with that, look at the performance of agriculture yesterday. Yesterday, it was performing at 3.58%. Can you imagine? That means we have seen agriculture rise above population growth rate. You have now seen agriculture matching urbanization growth rate. And then, despite all the tension, that is only possible because of the massive fiscal and monetary policy intervention that we have, and particularly the way the central bank and the bankers committee have come together to tackle, frontally the challenge of food security and nutrition, and also the challenge of producing agro raw materials for industries, agro-industrial raw materials. So I think we are getting somewhere. Honestly, you can now see light in the end of the tunnel. But if you look at the impact on inflation, see the message there. look at three components. The one at the top, cruising at a very high level, is the food sub-basket index. The one below it is the composite price index, which is the headline inflation, the one in red. And the one in blue is the core inflation. Now, core inflation is all indices minus food, farm produce, not food, but farm produce. Because when you come to farm sub-index, the farm produce sub-index, the food sub-index has two components. One of them is processed food. Some of it you can import, some of them you manufacture locally. Then the second one is farm produce. But this processed food is also part of the core inflation. So is available on both. So the real difference is caused by farm produce, because the processed food is in both parameters. Now look at the way it has behaved. If you notice that midway, the gap was over 10%, almost 10% gap, more than 10 to 15% gap. And that is now beginning to narrow. So if you notice that as the food sub-index is bending down and heading down to December, you can see that it is pushing down the middle headline inflation is going down with it. And so at the tip, when you look at the November, it's contracted to about 5%. The gap between the two have contracted to about 5% compared to over 15% 8 months down the line. So this is what is driving inflation. There are other things. I can't say that there are other things. Fundamental driver of inflation is money supply. But structural factors here are so pervasive and is driven by insecurity. For example, let me explain. When there's insecurity, investment melts down. Investors disappear. You won't find the foreign direct investors. The foreign portfolio investors are shy because they can't see through the wood. And then when COVID came, it even made things worse. So they have every reason to vanish. And when they cannot be sure what is going to happen in the economy, and they're seeing so many speculation on your economy, they want to hold back their dollar and take it back to Federal Reserve Bank in America, which is safe because they are the ones printing the dollar, and they are the ones, their bonds are safe. Everything you put there, you know it is safe. So that is why you have that impact on this. So let's go forward, because we have other things to cover. The population demographics is a big problem. And I will take you to what we call demographic time bomb. Let me tell you why it's a problem. You have a constant rise of 3% growth in our population over time. And you can see it, no shaking, is going up and up and up. All right. Now, but let's look at what Ban Ki-moon suggested that the world needs. Climate change people said the world will % less food by 2030 that are foreseen. When we come down to Nigeria to apply this, Nigerian population by 2030 will head to 300 million. The graphic, the population demographics, 65% of our population are people who are under the age of 35, which is twice the same number for that group for EU, because Nigeria is 208 million, EU is twice our population, but our population of people under 25 is higher than them, which means we're actually twice. And this means that a lot of their people are already, there's longevity, many are retired and they're still there, so that's another problem anyway. So, but for us, it tells you that when you look at the population that we have that are in that category, and then you look at the age, average age of the man who is growing the food, our farmer, is over 65 years old. Now, these 65-year-old farmers, including myself, I mean that kind of category, we're on, you know, we've already got, some of us have got our boarding pass, you know, and so you can't expect them to grow the food for the country. Now look at the urbanization growth rate. Why the population growth rate is 3%, the urbanization growth rate is 4.6%, which means that today only the proportion of rural and urban residents is 50%. But by 2030, 75% of our people will be in the city. So the young people are moving toward the city, and they're not involved in agriculture. And so who's going to grow the food for a rising population? So that is what they call demographic time bomb. So it doesn't look good. And so and then upon that, you have this shrinkage of the agroecology by conflict in all the 6 geopolitical zones, reducing the agroecological footprint. So you need intense mechanization, you need more land clearing, you need end-to-end intervention, and that is exactly what CBN program we will have time to talk about has delivered and tackled head on. But we'll see. We'll go to the next one, which is even more challenging. This is unemployment. Look at the graph of unemployment and then see how steady it was until it got to the 2020s. You saw this shift. It has now jumped. I think part of this jump was, modification of the definition anyway. But look at where it has gone to. Now, let me tell you, without sounding alarmist, our young people, on the average unemployment in the country is 33.5%. Okay. But when you disaggregate and look at the group that are under 35 years old, the unemployment rate is about 48 to 49%. And then when you add the underemployment, which is 22% to it, we are talking about over 70%. Now, let me tell you how difficult this is. If you remember when you had a conflict in Tunisia, unemployment was about 15%. When one young man went and put petrol on himself on the road and put himself on fire. And what happened? There was Arab Spring across the whole of North Africa. But here in Nigeria, we're talking about 5 times that number. I hate to think that any such thing can happen to us, because it can, because we are working very hard, all of us. Even those of you that are spreading the message, we will have to continue to spread hope. But it is a difficult situation. And I have to tell you, there are limits of politics. If you remember in January 1st, when the price of petrol was raised, everybody came out on the street and stopped the government. You remember NSAS, when it just became so pervasive, people stopped government. And we don't want any conflict of any nature to come, because what happens is that one issue will start and then all other issues will join, and then it will be hijacked by other people, and then we have no control. So we have to continue to spread the message, because there are hopes for us in this country, and the figures don't tell lies. Now, taking you to the debt situation. Yeah, we're borrowing. Why are we borrowing? We're borrowing because the government, the stock of infrastructure in our country is 35% of our GDP. But when we look at people like South Africa, it's about 80% of their GDP. And many developed countries and developing countries, their stock of infrastructure is over 100% of their GDP. And then you know that you need investment. Whatever even to dismantle a block, you need investment. So the investment creates economic activity. Economic activity creates employment. Employment generates disposable income. And with your disposable income, you can pay for education, poverty reduction, and your health. That's the sustainable cycle. So there's nowhere to run. You have to invest. The issue is this. Initially, you will say, how much money have I saved? How much has the government saved? Nothing. The government hasn't got it. So if you don't have the savings to invest, you go to go borrowing. And who goes a borrowing, in some cases also goes a sorrowing. So that's where we find ourselves. But the issue is this. What are we borrowing for? Fiscal responsibility as 2007 defines it completely. It says you can only borrow for capital expenditure or human resource development, which you know includes education, health, and employment. You can only borrow for long-term, okay, and then it has to be cost-benefit analysis to justify that. And then when you say concessionary rates as well, and concessionary rates means around 3% or so. So the law captures all that, and matters around lending and borrowing is on the exclusive legislative list. So governors don't think that they can just go and borrow any money, take over drafting. No, it's on the exclusive list. And there are a lot more stories about this. We haven't got the time to go into that detail. Right. And look at the breakdown. So here you see the breakdown of the external debt, domestic debt stock at the federal level and at state level, and then what the debt as a percentage of our GDP, which is slightly ticking off. You could see that at the very, very top going up. heading towards 40%. And then we know that by 2025, there are projections that it will go very close to 50%. So is that a good thing? The answer is we still have the headroom, but the real challenge is your ability to repay. And so that's where we have the biggest challenge. But I can tell you that the government, I'm not a spokesman of government, but I have seen their aggressive push. If you look at the 2021 Finance Act, and then I've been to Senate sessions looking at revising the Fiscal Responsibility Act 2007, they are pouring venom on MDAs that are not paying back money to the Consolidated Revenue Fund. I've seen an aggressive push towards doubling the revenue base to government from 7% to 15% over the next few years. So I have seen that intent, and I have seen the signing of the PIA, which the FIRS says, oh, that will double our revenue. So by the end of this year, they expect to see 10-point-something trillion. I mean, this also that we're not doing nothing. We're doing something, but it is not Uhuru yet. Now, just another perspective, we have a medium-term development plan, which actually says we're going to have more borrowing. And the medium-term plan from 21 to 2025, I don't know how 2015 came in here, but that says that we are looking to borrow 348 trillion naira, equivalent to about 70 trillion investment, not borrowing, investment, and investment will come from anywhere. But that is the investment expected, approximately 70 trillion every year. The government says, oh no, we can only do 50 trillion between all tiers of government, 49.7 trillion. So federal government says, oh, we can only do 29, call it 30 trillion. The state and local, you can do 20 trillion, broken down into 13.4 trillion for states and 6.8 trillion for local government. So they're saying, private sector, we want you to come and take control of this whole situation. 300 out of this 350 trillion investment, we want it to come from private sector. So what you will see going forward is which sector is going to have to do what, and what that means in terms of targets for 2025 from various sectors. And I remember when I spoke to the banking, what do you call it, bankers committee last December, I actually brought in some reality check on them on what we expect. This National Development Plan expects of them by 2025. I think it made some people sweat, but you also need to be aware because you are also dealing with the financial side. Now, major topic. Why do we have a need for more non-oil export drive? So what is the strategic context for this CBN real-time race to 200 non-oil forex program? What is the rationale? Why are we concerned with that? How do we justify what we're trying to do? What is the base case? Right, there are four major sources of forex. As you all know, there are some invincible things going on, but four: proceeds from the oil export, which is dwindling; proceeds from non-oil export, which has enormous potential to take us to stratosphere; diaspora remittance, which used to be around $26 billion and which over the COVID period collapsed. But now we have now seen a resurgence that it has increased from $6 million per week in December 2020 to $100 million per week in January 2022. But it has potential to double and triple. But more work needs to be done here. Then the fourth one, of course, is the foreign direct investment and foreign portfolio investment. We have severe challenges in these two, and is aggravated by the insecurity in the country. And of course, the COVID-19 made it even worse, because what COVID-19 did was it cast a shadow on the viability of so many companies, the supply chain disruptions, and all of that. So people are no longer sure that their investment in some companies will yield anything, and that the companies will even survive. And then they see governments all over the world borrowing and borrowing, and they know the impact of borrowing. You have to service the debts. And some of these debts are denominated in dollars. 60% of world debt is denominated in dollars. And so that means that when Federal Reserve Bank says they are going to increase the monetary policy rate and other. It means that the debt
Hello, Prof.
Right, are we back?
Yes.
Right, okay. How about my screen sharing? Can you enable my screen sharing?
Yes, we can.
Oh boy.
Can you please go on?
I hope. Okay, I'm just looking for my screen.
All right.
Right, okay. Okay, so that's okay, right. I'm glad. So crashes in crude oil prices between 2015 to 2017 resulted in a loss of over $100 billion, which is $41.5 trillion in current offshore rates. So in this current recession, must have lost over $30 billion in foreign exchange just in this current recession. Now, let's look at, we are going to, before we charge into the current issue on the table, let's just go back a little bit, the memory lane, to see how we have fared on three current recessions or three financial crises. In 2008, 2009, you remember there was American subprime mortgage crisis, which was a fever that caught everybody globally, caught that. And then Nigeria was in a strong position. Our banks were exposed to systemic collapse. And this was because of our overexposure to those other markets, you know, the oil and gas markets and all of that. But what happened that we had over 60%, $50 billion in reserve, 60, and then over 22 billion in excess crude accounts. So we were in a position to set up AMCON, to buy up the debts, and over 6 trillion naira has been spent now in buying debts, and we haven't got back anything more than 1.5 trillion. That's how Nigeria dealt with that crisis. So we prevented the financial crisis from going into a major economic crisis. All right, we now look at what happened in 2006, 2017. We had economic recession, which was actually stagflation, that was induced by exogenic shock in the collapse of oil price and also the collapse in the production volumes. And then our foreign reserves dropped from over 40 billion right down to even under 25 billion. And we had so much panic in the land, and it was only CBN that was standing because all others didn't, everybody was confused. We didn't see that coming. We had currency devaluations, as you know, many times. We had macroprudential measures that were put in place. Then capital account control followed. We started getting battered. And then we now had to switch to forex demand management, and then restricted 43 items from forex eligibility. He didn't cancel anything. He didn't stop them, but he says, I haven't got it to give. So what then happened was that it wasn't enough to restrict these items. The banks and the CBN and the bankers committee came together and said, look, let us fight this. We're going to have to fight this. So you had now a backward integration agenda, which was aimed at import substitution. And then CBN now deepened this intervention on the 10 presidential value chain, priority value chains, and extended them to 21 value chains. And the primary one that is leading the charge, of course, you know, is Uncle Borowa's program, but there are many other programs, because altogether is about 3 trillion naira that has been put out on intervention programs. So in the event of this 2020 COVID, there was massive quantitative fiscal and monetary policy intervention. On the monetary policy, got about 3.5 trillion on the table. On the fiscal, there were 2.3 trillion economic sustainability plan, and in which CBN also committed to 1.5 trillion of that money, and government was bringing in $500 billion. But the thing was that we got out of recession within a quarter. So by December of 2020, we are out of it. But we had to pour resources, and then the resources were balanced. Not only that we are putting money on output, you're also putting money on consumption to ensure that we don't have people die of poverty. Those who are out on unemployment are able to still manage. And so you saw so much that happened. We got out of recession. The first recession took us 5 quarters, but this one was only 1 quarter. And ever since, we have not looked back ever since. Even the result of yesterday showed we have not looked back. The company is just on the way to recovery. Now, one thing I have to say is that the imperative of CBN working with bankers committee to wage war against the existential challenges facing Nigeria is something that we reporters of economic and financial developments in the country really need to digest. One, we have pervasive insecurity, And the nature of that insecurity is asymmetric warfare in 6 geopolitical zones. You're fighting an enemy, you don't know who he is. You don't have a battlefield. All you know is that you are spending 22% of your national budget on security. That is not pennies. 22% of the budget is going on security. All right. Now, you have the effect that insecurity drives away foreign direct investment and portfolio investment. Even the people who are investors inside the country are not happy to go and create new facilities in other states, build more factories. They're just holding their money back, sending the money back, transferring the money into dollar, buying dollar to hold instead of holding naira. And there's speculation, and you are now entering into a election year. The second one is peace security is an existential problem. If we do nothing, it is not an option. Do nothing is not an option. What will happen is in weeks, if you do nothing, in matter of weeks, Nigeria will be overrun like Afghanistan. And many people will not even have a home to go to. Will you believe? I don't think how the countries around us would be happy to take in 208 million people. The second one is COVID-19. COVID-19 and the mutations are clearly a matter of life and death. You've seen so many mutations from Delta to Omicron, and it's going to continue to mutate because it's carried by human beings, some of which don't want to take vaccination. So it's going to be mutated. So it's not going to go away. Now, what has happened with this is that since it is a matter of life and death, we had to fight it. And then both authorities fought it to a standstill. And that's why we got out in 1 quarter. Now, let's look at the third one, the most dangerous one, which is impact on food security, nutrition, and on unacceptable levels of unemployment. Now, I said this, many people would have died of starvation and hunger in Nigeria than COVID-19 and all the victims of insecurity put together, if we did not take that decisive action to tackle food security through the likes of Anchor Borrowers program, and then challenge the consequence of these 125 million people that are unemployed. Look at these people coming out of university. 6%, only 7% of graduates coming out of university can find employment. What's going to happen to 93%? I've already discussed with you the figures that send chills through your spines on unemployment. But all these are matter of death, for life and death, to some of the people that are at the cold end and that are not getting jobs. So these 3 problems, they had to confront. Now, let me give you one scenario that ties with the last one, which is this agriculture thing. Public Leadership of Agriculture Development Program, for example, the Federal Ministry of Agriculture, Water Resources, working with their state counterparts, have actually produced some results, very important results, because they have led to the construction of over 350 dams in the country. They have built strategic grain reserves and silos in many of states, nearly 30. They have also built some feeder roads. They funded agricultural research institutes and agencies that are producing new crops and new improved seeds and input planting materials. They have put hundreds of billions of naira importing NPK fertilizers, sending them through the state governors and their commissioners to distribute to farmers and all of that. They bought a lot of tractors and their agro equipment, but they have been less successful as a program, as an agricultural program, in dealing with reducing post-harvest losses, which is between 30% and 70%. And they have not been very successful in increasing our value addition. So our value addition continues to be low. If you look at the GDP, how can the manufacturing sector be 18% and agriculture is 26%? It should be the other way around. It should be double. It should actually be 40% manufacturing, that sector. Industry should be about 40% or 45%, if the agriculture base is about 26%. So it tells you that we have a lot more work to do on value addition. And you've seen a lot of examples that will come. Now, despite the high number of dams that we have, over 350 dams, how many of them are actually giving us, are being used for irrigation? How many of them are being used for aquaculture? Not many. If you look at China, China produces 4 times more fish from aquaculture than capture fishery. If you look at Nigeria and compare Nigeria to South Africa, we have 4 times more surface water than South Africa. But compare the productivity between the 2 countries. Just in the same way as you may compare power between the 2 countries. We are 4 times their population, but they are producing 10 times more power than us, which is 40,000 megawatts, and we are doing only 4,000, which means that per capita, they are doing 40 times more than Nigeria. But that's the story for another day. Now, the feeder roads are hardly maintained, and most strategic grain reserves are empty and in disrepair. Many trailers of fertilizers meant for farmers, first of all, they arrive very late. They are diverted by some of the commissioners. You know that the Enugu State Commissioner for Agriculture had to be sacked because he diverted the trailer and sold it. And they said they will send it the next day, you see them all in the market. And then the grains, that the input that are promised the farmers will be waiting for the input until the farming season is over. So these are real problems. It's not that the government is not doing something, but what it's doing is probably not, putting square peg in square hole. So the man that actually needs the money is what they call the last mile. That is the man, the farmer that needs his input and small change to enable him grow the crop, maintain it, and then bring out something. Is the last mile. We haven't actually reached that last mile in a way that will ensure that agribusiness will takes rather than only focusing on agriculture development program. So that's the thing. So these challenges of the last mile, which is compounded by lack of access to affordable finance. So government doesn't go into lending. No, government gives grants. It's not the government business to be lending money. You leave it to the bank, to the private sector. So now, when you now see the central bank now sit with bankers committee and say, look, gentlemen, we've taken so many measures, but we really need to now tackle this agriculture. So what we do? The banking community said, well, but lending to agriculture is too risky because of misalignments in the public-led agriculture development program. I said, okay, all right, $500 million, I set up NISA. NISA should de-risk up to 80%. So that's response number 1. Then the committee says, okay, but how about the KYC? How do you actually know the customer you're lending the money to? Okay, the people say, okay, all right, I put biometric bank verification number now using artificial intelligence. So that's fine. They brought that. So they say, okay, that's fine. At least we can now know who it is. We can see his picture, fingerprint, and details, phone number and all that. Okay, that's fine. Then he now says, okay, but how about the location? You're giving them money to go and farm. Where are they? How do you show that they're having a farm? Then the CBN introduced global GPS, using GPS to acquire satellite coordinates of the farmland, right? So they're not happy. They can sit on their desk in the bank and see that land through Google, and they say, okay, that I can actually see it. He has cleared it. Although the crops have actually grown, ready for, you can see it. But that's not all. They ask, okay, but how about the limiting our risk? Obligor limits. Oh, okay. If we are piloting this, let's keep it low so that you don't break bones because of, okay, let's do it. 1 man, 1 hectare, 1 farmer, 1 hectare, where you know that they will require about 200 to 500,000 naira per farmer, depending on the crop. So it's not too much. They're not taking too much risk. Okay, at that level, they are comfortable to say, okay, no collateral is required, and then have an organization of maybe some guarantor, and then cross guarantee, and have some community associations and cooperatives to further, so that's fine. So for the bank, we're moving somewhere. They say, but it's not end though. What if these guys don't want to pay? They collect the money, they do the crop, they don't want to pay. Okay, CBN had to run to the law to recognize global standing instruction, GSI, so that if you don't pay and they tried everything that they can, then they will now sweep your account and possibly sweep the account of your guarantor. So but we don't want to go there. But we could do that if it persists. But that's the last charge. Now, but the other issue is, how about clearing the lands? Okay, it's end-to-end. We're going to fund mechanization services. We're also going to fund land clearing services. But this whole issue about giving cash to farmers, can we not do something else? Okay, look, let's give them input, remove cash from this system. They will have the services of our recognized and accredited land clearing companies to do the mechanization. and that is the harrowing and the ridging and the plowing. Or make it small, 10,000 naira per hectare. So that's fine. How about the inputs? Oh, we'll get inputs, certified inputs ready. So they are going to be input suppliers. All are standardized price according to the economies of production. Then how about, so you have the things like NPK fertilizer, urea, organic fertilizer. We know the quantity required per hectare. We know the quantity of urea. So maybe four bags of NPK per hectare, 2 bags of urea per hectare. So we know that, and it's standardized, and the farmer will receive those. Now, you have to give some change to the farmer too, because he is going to be paid for clearing, not for broadcasting the seeds and then applying the fertilizers and all that and maintenance. So they get their money, 10,000 per hectare for all of that. It may get 60,000 or 50,000. Farmer gets something to pay for his own input. And then how about insurance? What happens if the rain comes and then there's flood? 2% insurance, 2% of that money goes to insurance. Okay, but how about support? Okay, we may have to pay maybe 5,000 a hectare for extension support. Okay, but how about the produce when it's ready? What happens? We're going to have an aggregator. So somebody that comes out, go and meet the farmer there and collect the crop. You are paying with crops, not money. So we put cash out of the system. Then the aggregator will aggregate the produce. You saw the pyramid, the rice pyramid. Those rice are paddies, raw paddies from the farm. They use that to repay the loan. So you saw them displayed. And as soon as it was displayed, they all head out straight to the processor to process and mill the rice, and off it goes. The same with maize, the same with other products. So your farmer just sits down as an outgrower, everything comes to him and everything is taken away. His own portion keeps with him. But CBN is only interested in the one that is going to be used to repay their loan. If you want them to collect all the other ones you have, no problem. If you did 6 tons per hectare of rice in your farm, only 1 ton or 1.5 tons would actually repay your loan. The other one is your profit. You know, it's just like that. If anybody tells you that they didn't pay, or there was poor yield, they didn't farm anything, please, they didn't put anything on the ground. Because we have insurance to cover you if you had fraud. And then if there are inputs for you to collect, if you really meant to do the business. So don't listen to that story, ask for the evidence. So that is what happened. And then what was the result? The result is that as at last week, 948 billion naira has gone into loan to 4.5 million farmers who have farmed 5.2 million hectares and who have delivered 12.5 million direct and indirect jobs. Gentlemen, this is a matter of evidence. This is the fact. And when the figures and facts are there, they're incontrovertible. But that is the fact. And you tell me in living memory, when you have seen this order of number of farmers getting this kind of money with no collateral, and then when you have at the heat of all the problems we have in the country with all the frontal attack on all our agroecological system, you have 5.2 million hectares being farmed. The challenge is this: let's extend this to other states. Let's have more value chains in. And that is where we are going to land when we come to RT200. Now, let's look at the profile of the CBN 3 trillion that they have put in over the last few years. Anchor borrowers, I've just mentioned that the figures there, 5.2 million hectares, 4.48 and 948. But there are also targeted facility. Number 2 is targeted credit facility. Now, that targeted credit facility is critical in 2020 because it was targeting household and MSMEs. If you look at GDP, about 60%, minimum of 60% of that GDP is consumption. Is consumption, household consumption. So consumption and production and output are all part of the same GDP measurement. So if you are putting all your money in producing output, increasing output to come to, and then the capacity for the people to buy is not enhanced, you have actually created a problem for the manufacturer. Because the manufacturer would have borrowed money from you, produced the crops, produced the food, and the whatever, and nobody has the money to pay for it. Because you've already sacked a lot of those workers. So that's why you had to balance it. And then you had almost 1 million people getting 368 billion, and then they're able to match demand to supply. And the micros came in as well. Then you have the ongoing RSSF, the Real Sector Support Facility, clocking 1.4 trillion. And that's a lot of large companies. So the world is made up of large companies and then MSMEs. So you can see 337 large enterprises spread across our real sector, the agriculture, the mining, the manufacturing services, getting money to go big. And that's where you hear the likes of Roland doing 50,000 hectares with integrated. And also look at the integrated rice mills. We've moved from 6 integrated rice mills to 50 integrated rice mills. And that's big investment. They are bringing in private sector in a big way to commit to this sustainable expansion of our agricultural production system. Now, look, AgSmith was another one from the Bankers Committee, and that has given out, initially it was targeted at 10 million per farmer, but I think it's probably going to go down to about 3 million. But look at the number. The number is 37,500, and the demand for this completely outstrips the money available. And people are waiting for years now to access their money, who have already met all the conditions. And if you look at the balance of it, 67% of that activities actually went to agriculture. And the other sectors got about, services got about 22.5%. Healthcare and pharmaceutical, because the problem was health in 2020, a special intervention of 100 billion, which increased to 115, 122 major healthcare companies got in. You have 31 pharmaceutical companies, 91 hospitals, and they bought so many equipment, MRI, 59 of them were imported, CT scan, 42, oncology, and you can see resources are coming. And when you have this deployment, you know, this is medical tourism. And medical tourism is not less than $1 billion every year. If you have all these, then you can have all these tests done and diagnostics. Then you talk about treatment. Electricity stabilization, 229 billion to 9 discos, and that has actually helped to move deliver the power from 4,000 to 5,000 megawatts. Of course, the plan is to go to 7.5 and to 10. But that tell you this, look at this one, the emitter. The emitter, 47 billion spent on providing funding 858,000 meters, have actually helped the discos to improve their revenue by about 69 billion. And then you can see how that is taken up. The 100 for 100 PPP, which is moving up the value chain and saying, okay, let's attack the manufacturing side of this thing, the processing and manufacturing. Let's have this program of 100 by 100 for 100 PPP. In 100 days, we will give money to 100 companies if they're eligible and they're meeting our conditions for them to produce and process. Now, it was oversubscribed. 28 have got money, 23.2 billion has been disbursed. But if we continue with this program, it means that in 365 days of a year, we could get 365 companies to access money. And the maximum will be 5 billion. But if it is more, they could go to CBN, can go to the board. But if you look at that, it means about 1.5 trillion to 1.7 trillion can actually be disbursed in a year supporting this. But let me tell you what excites me about this program is this. If you look at our manufacturing capacity today in Nigeria, 80% of that, minimum of 80%, depend on it for imported raw materials. You've seen when Obasanjo was president, he tried to force them to incorporate 20% of our cassava to mix with barley in producing beer. All these efforts have gone on, but are they sustainable? So you cannot come to these companies that are gulping most of our foreign exchange and say to them, you know what, I'm going to take you on. I'm not going to have you have all this money and then he's going to be going into the gutter to fight political economy. You don't want to do that right now. The whole situation is so fragile. So what is best for you, advisable, is create a new vista of economic opportunities. I now have this money and this program, 100 for 100 people. If you want to take this money and do your manufacturing, you must have minimum of 50% raw materials. You must have minimum of 80% employment of Nigeria. So you're creating the opportunity. Let the other one continue, you know, we'll meet them somewhere, but let's start. Because if you go into the gutter to fight political economy, you may never come out of it in one piece. Now we migrate to a third layer, which is the RT200. And that is focusing on non-oil export. I have gone through the statistics painstakingly at the beginning to tell you why we need to pay a lot of attention to non-oil export. And now we are saying, okay, we're going to come to that level of export and then see what we can do. And that's where this is targeting. And saying, I want your dollar. I want to see this color of your dollar. If you bring it in, I'll incentivize you. Private sector reacts to incentive. It is only incentive that makes private sector do wonders and do what they do, that gets creativity on the table and they move with speed. Now, one of them, another game changer, is Infrastructure Company PLC. I remember I was in that meeting in March when COVID came in the CBN. I was there, and all the captains of industry were invited. And after deliberations and deliberations, they came up and said, look, we're going to take on this challenge of infrastructure. We want to float a world-class infrastructure company. We want government to capitalize it with 1 trillion, and we're going to go to the market to look for 15 trillion naira. It's about naira, not dollars, to face the infrastructure. So what they're saying now, okay, government, this 26 major national infrastructure that is costing you pain, making you borrow so much money and putting us in more debt and all this whole dollar thing, let's work with you on those. Push this over, we will rework them, we will repackage them, we'll get private sector in and out of them, and we move. Let's borrow in from federal government, more action using our naira, and less exposure to Forex. But that is a game changer, much as what we are also looking at today. Now, if we are going to get into the export, what opportunity do we have? I look at the NEC Zero Oil Plan, where they simply said, okay, there is 11 projects or 10 of them. I want to target 5% export. Okay. I mean, if you go to soya now, you see Brazil doing 35% of the world production. And if you look at Nigeria, Nigeria is doing 71% of world yam production. If you look at cassava, Nigeria is doing 60 million metric tons, 25% of world cassava. So for us to say we are aspiring at 5% is no big deal. But let's look at the figures. Petrochemical, the world international trade, the value of the global volume of these products is the second column. We are target of 5%, what that translates to in billions of dollars, and which geopolitical zones, that is looking at the geopolitical criteria, which zones and states are more likely, not that everybody can do anything, but more likely to give us rapid results. So that's what you have on the right-hand side. And please don't quote me, I just suggested some of these, you know, based on the natural advantages that they have. So petrochemical, 150 billion worldwide, we go to about 7.5 billion. And then you can see the figure going down. Cotton and yarn, sugar, soya beans, we could do 20% of soya beans or 10% anyway. But then continue palm oil. I mean, we're already doing this before. We remember we are doing 60% of world palm oil down to 40% and now zero, almost zero. But we can go back and then we can see more light in the end of the tunnel. Rice, you've seen the pyramid. So you see the rubber, hides, and leather, and cocoa. All right, we'll see more detail. Then gold, we just went down to 0.5% because there is you know, the gold mines are still to be developed. And then although in Zamfara, we are seeing much more higher figure than this. But let's continue. Now, there's the category B products, which could bring additional foreign exchange. Some of them are actually bringing them. You see cement and clinkers, you know that was what drove the success of the cement industry through the backward integration agenda. But we still can get as much as $500 million from that. Tomato, we are not importer of tomato. We're trying, but we're still a long way. Then you see banana and plantain, oranges, cashew. Cashew is, we could do $250 million from cashew, currently doing about $90 million. The demand is $4.5 billion. Cassava, why not? I mean, I'm shocked that we are putting only 250 million when we are producing 25% of world cassava. And if we are looking at 25% of 3 billion, you're talking about a lot of money, not 250 million. Sesame seed, we are almost we're very close in sesame seed production. We're doing well there. Spices, ginger, we're already exporting these. Shea butter, cowpeas, okay? There are other products like cotton that we can get as much as 2.6 billion, leather 450, soya, and sugar. Okay, all right. Now let's look at the program framework for the RT200. 3 major components: value-added export facility, non-oil commodity expansion facility, non-oil forex rebate scheme. If you are bringing back that dollar, then we incentivize you. And that has proved itself over the 2 programs of remittance, transfer, and the incentive, and then also export promotion and export expansion grants regime. Then you have dedicated non-oil export terminal and biannual non-oil export summit. We'll just take them one by one, and I think I'll rush through that. Now, this is targeting existing products that are already in the market that will have the potential to improve value addition. That is targeting that. Already in the market, if you take, for example, we are producing about 770 metric tons of sesame seed, cashew, and cocoa, of which only about 12 million metric tons, 12,000 metric tons are consumed locally, and the others are exported. Now, 16.8% of these 758,000 metric tons are exported annually. If you process that, then you're going to see a difference. Now, if you take cocoa, where Côte d'Ivoire, Nigeria, and Ghana are producing 72% of world cocoa, raw cocoa, but the size of this value chain, the size of this industry is $130 billion. So we are accounting for 72% of this raw material, but we are only earning 5%, 5 to 6% of what that value chain results in. So surely we have a mileage. If we reduce export to half and then process that half, you can see where we're going to land. Then, and similar thing will happen for some of the other commodities. Now, the second program, which is looking at non-oil commodity expansion facility, fits into some of the category 2, the one that I just went through, where you are saying, okay, this will be a concessionary facility that will be designed to significantly boost local production of exportable commodities. You saw in my table, the 2 tables, the second table is still exportable commodities, but you can put more money there and increase that. And some of this raw material you are producing could be fed into the first program, which is the one I have just gone through. So they can actually be raw material for the value-adding export facility if you have brought them to the standard required. So they can work together, A and B can work together. Okay, but there will be a geographical prioritization of these crops, which I have actually indicated from the table I showed you before, but I said, don't hold me responsible. It's just an exercise that I did to make you feel that everybody has something to contribute in this country. Now, the third one, non-oil forex rebate scheme, is just an incentive scheme. It's over and above low lending at 5%. You know, it should be 9%, but it reduced to 5%. And we thank God that they extended the thing to another 1 year, to 1st of March next year. So concession will continue. Now, this is incentive. When you now sell and then you bring back the dollar, you get some boost. So it's a special local currency rebate scheme for non-oil exporters of semi-finished and finished produce who show verifiable evidence of export proceeds repatriated into the country and sold directly into the IE window to boost liquidity in the market. It's similar to what we've done on diaspora remittance, to say naira to dollar. You get 4 naira for each dollar. I mean, these things are just incentives. These incentives can be improved over time, and they could, you know, they're transient. We just have to see how they go. Okay. Then we'll come to the next one, which is, we're getting to the end of it now. Oh dear. I don't know. Okay. Right. Now I have the dedicated non-oil export terminal. Now this is another story. You see, I told you about not going into the gutter to fight the political economy. Do we say, okay, if we are doing all the number 1 to number 3, then go into a proper seaport and force your way through and then dismantle all the shenanigans going on there? It's not going to happen. So what you needed to do was to say, okay, let's create a new dedicated non-oil export terminal. We are going to build it fit for the purpose, have all the facilities that they require, you know, including export conditioning center, all that through cold chain and all of that. Make it the way you want it, world-class standard.
Prof.
And then, yes?
our time is fast spent. We appreciate your presentation, but we would just like you to try and summarize the end,
2
so that
minutes.
we can have
Just give
time
me
for question.
No problem. 2 minutes. 2 minutes will be out of this. Okay,
All right,
so
sir.
that's what this terminal thing is looking at. So both at the airport side and on the sea side, we'll find who we can work with, but this is where it is going. Don't forget, in the end of the day, customs will still come there and manage it, and then all the agencies will still come in there. But design it to suit the purpose. So that is what it is talking about. Then the conference and the export commit, fine. That one is necessary for continuous dialogue, and also possibility of exhibition of made in Nigerian products there and trade and investment. So they may all come into that. So there are some examples. And then what I suggested for us to consider is I have some suggestions here that we should try and develop a pool of business advisors across the whole value chains and across the financial community that will help in assessing these programs and then scoring an assessment and giving feedback to people. If people apply and they don't get the money, give them a constructive feedback so that they can go and rework their program. And so we'll build capacity in the country for success, and then let the banks begin to have their own pool of staff that can actually help people develop business plans that add up. That's what I'm trying to say here. And then the roles of CBN is a strategic lead with the banking community, with this bankers committee. Ministries have their mandates on fiscal incentive for the finance, trade and industry, the exchange of policy, trade promotion, investment policy, and regulation and incentives regimes, and they work with other authorities. And also, you talk to agriculture. Agriculture has policies, and especially the agriculture development program, which they have been doing, and about applying them, nothing changes. All we do is we want more coordination between those so that nobody gets left behind. Because after all, the sector that we are supporting needs to have incentives from government and alignment with policy. And then there's the regulatory agency in various aspects. So we need to be able to work with them. Science and technology do with innovation and appropriate technology. State and local governments have their role to play in making lands available and all of that. And then you have banks that are going to apply to be PFIs, participating financial institutions. So these programs are going to be available for them to enter. They just apply to CBN to become participants. Even the other ones, the development bank, like Nexim, Bank of Agriculture, Industry, they could all be participating financial institutions. The door is open for them to participate. So CBN doesn't lend money direct to people. They lend the money through the banks. It could be development bank, it could be commercial bank, it could be microfinance banks. And the export development agencies already have a role to play. I started by showing you what NEPC is doing. They've already invested money and resources in identifying some of these crops and they have a statutory role to play in all that journey. So customs have their role to play. NDLA, they will all play their roles, immigration. But the thing is that they have to align. We all have to align and seem to be working together so that the private sector doesn't suffer. The other infrastructure and logistic agencies, that the Post Authority and the Shippers Council, the MASA, they have statutory role, the Export Processing Zone Authority, and then they have roles in improving trade facilitation, in building the infrastructure, the cold chain logistics and export houses. And then you have the business ownership organizations like NASIMA, NASI, MAN, they are there to organize the private sector. We have other regulatory agencies like SNAN, SON, and NAFDAC, and Plan Quarantine. They're all playing a role in the chain. If they don't pass this product, you can move it to point A to point B. If they don't give you sanitary and phytosanitary certificate, this product is not going to go out of the country. If it goes out, they will stop you. So all of those have roles to play, without a doubt. And I think I have to thank you. Thank you so much.
I think we have come to the end of the presentation by Prof. And I want to believe that it's a thorough and well-researched presentation. It's a presentation that I believe that our members will take the materials and they can use it for, I can say, up to a month, because it's involving. And we have figures that can help us out to kind of let our readers, our viewers, and our listeners know where the economy is, what the government is doing, and the other departments of government, specifically what CBN is doing. I want to, through this medium, express our appreciation to the Prof for this presentation, because it has shown to us that Prof didn't buy his certificates, but he worked for it, because it's very, very elaborate and very deep in figures. We appreciate you, Prof, once again. And I remember while we were in school, when a prof make a presentation that should be well applauded, everybody will shout, Prof, Prof. And I think that is what our members are saying. Prof, you have done so well for us. We can assure you and guarantee you that this presentation will go a long way in enlightening and educating the masses. But having said that, I am sure our members are itching to ask one or two questions. But under this, I want to bring to our notice that at a point, Prof said, please don't quote me in an area he talked about. He just tried to make us to have a better understanding of his paper and the economy. So please, if we get to that area where he said, please don't quote me, let us abide by that and let us not quote him. But other areas, we can talk about them and write about them. Thank you. If we have any question, we can signify and we will get the questions across. Let us type our questions and then the Prof will respond to those questions as they come. Please let the questions come in. Type, let them just type your question and the Prof will get it and he will respond to them. We have question from Yinka Kolawole. He said, fantastic presentation. Thanks, Prof. Hope the presentation will be shared. Well, this question is, well, we can assure you we'll get the presentation shared to our members. Another one, very well researched presentation. Thanks, Prof. Tony Chukuyem. We appreciate you too.
Thank you. I will say that I have sent a copy of this presentation to your champ, your president, so he's at liberty to share it with all of you. Thank you.
Yes. Immediately after the program, the presentation will be shared. But I want you to appreciate the fact that we have somebody that if we want to bring in terms of money. I don't think our able to pay. Even if we pay, we will struggle to our bosses. I met Prof bankers committee where he brought in by the bank to talk to the banker. So here he is talking to us. I want us to have that in mind and bring up our questions. Thank you. Thank you.
We can still continue with our questions, send in questions. All we've been seeing is an appreciation of the fantastic presentation of the Prof. That tells us that our members are truly following and they all appreciated what Prof has been able to do for us. And like I said, it's not something that can be quantified monetarily, because what the Prof has done, we cannot quantify it monetarily for him. But we only keep saying, Prof, we appreciate you, and we can assure you that this paper will go a long way into letting the public know. Another person, a former chairman of FICAN, Mr. Oludari Mayowa, said, thank you to Prof. It was a great presentation. However, your suggestion that the CBN should keep cash out of the loans to banks and give them, input. Are you not seeing room or corruption on the part of those who will manage the process? That's the question, Prof.
Okay, I think it's a good question actually. But let me explain some. First of all, in my presentation, I didn't actually say you shouldn't quote me. But what I had did was I looked at the states, all the states that you can potentially grow all these crops, and then I aggregated them into Northwest, Northeast, North, South. So, I mean, there's nothing wrong there. It's just that is all the product of research. Where are you growing these crops? These crops grow everywhere. For example, cassava. Cassava grows all states of the country. There's no crop, you'll be shocked. You'll be shocked because I have seen cotton. Cotton is doing 1.2 tons per hectare, and then they increase to about 4 tons. But I have seen cotton taken to Nsukka in Enugu State that is doing 8 metric tons. So nobody knew that you can actually grow it there. But you know, the thing is that there's virtually little crops you don't grow almost everywhere in this country. Some have smaller number of months you can actually grow. Some have season farming. You have 2 seasons because there is access to more water and irrigation. So it's not that I'm telling lies with statistics. You can quote me on anything that is in there, but I'm saying that it is not exhaustive. You know, the list, the things I did on the extreme right are not exhaustive. Now, back to the question. Now, if you look at the Anchor Borrowers Program, what we are dealing with, there are different ways of accessing the money. There are different programs. You have the prime anchor. Now, the prime anchors are the likes of Dangote, Olam Farm, the big boys that are looking for 50,000 hectares, 10,000 hectares to grow their crops for integrated farming and processing. And then they just go there. Nobody talks about input, and they just borrow their money for whatever they want to do. They provide collateral, and then they are good to go. Nobody goes there to tell them, you're going to give you this input. No. Anybody can just go and ask for money to do his own show. You have the second one where state governments are borrowing. State governments want to come into this program, they would have to bring their guarantee, of course, you know, their own collateral is the ISPO, and then they take the money they want and then they do their own thing. Nobody goes to criticize them about giving them input. It is only in the particular case of Anchor Borrowers Program where we are waiving this collateral requirement, holding them down to 1 hectare, micromanage, just trying to get these guys and nurture to make sure we remove as much obstacle as possible. And it was like a pilot. So you want to reduce the variables that will lead to farmer grabbing this money and is unable to pay because they suddenly gave one, they didn't buy the correct seed as they said they were going to use, they didn't plant it. So let me tell you why it's helped us. This has helped us to transform from subsistence farmer to commercial farmers. What is commercial? Somebody is doing 5,000 hectares of rice, and it's the same rice grain that you are using, the same hybrid. You are using the same farrow, 44. You are using the same farrow across 5,000 hectares, and then the farmers are planting it at a particular time. You know that 4 months or 3 months after, you can go and harvest. Now, people can plan their processing capacity. You can now plan your rice mill, your parboiling section, so that he knows the type of grain that is coming in. He knows how long to heat it and how long to steam it, and then we'll dry it. So you don't have 200 different types of grains being fed into this factory. You have one. So he can build to scale. And then you get quality rice coming out, the same size, the same tall, they have, you know, everything the same. So you're actually creating the room for commercial agriculture. And you are using subsistence farmers to aggregate them as outgrowers and use to work them. So instead of, you know, so it fits all the bills and, you know, ticks all the boxes. As I said, any farmer, you don't have to be in that group with 1 hectare. You can go and borrow your own, go and borrow 10 million and do 50 hectares, and nobody will ask you about come and take this seed. No, just go and take your money and do your thing.
Thank you. A question came up before our chairman will ask his own question. The question is from Odume Festus, and it says that Prof, sir, no doubt, great presentation. Do you think the efforts of government to raise revenue through Finance Act, making MDAs to contribute to National Treasury is enough to address our debt repayment challenge in the short term? What is your take, sir?
My take is that it will go a long way. It will go a long way because for you to, we were getting about 800, 600 billion from the MDAs, from the agencies. But now we're looking at over 1 trillion now. But also here the chairman of the Senate saying that we can actually get as much as 3 trillion from these agencies. See, the thing is this, only 122 agencies under the Fiscal Responsibility Act are in the schedule. The Senate said, we don't care, I want everybody in. All the agencies should come in. Let us decide when we are inspecting them, whether they're actually getting money or not getting money or not. Open it up. And so many, we don't have the time to go through what is going on there. But there is aggression on the part of government to get money. But the Finance Act has actually widened the participation of other people in the tax revenue rather than impose more tax or higher tax to the existing people paying the tax or companies. It's actually widening the base. For example, if you look at services, trading services, mode 1, mode 2, mode 3, you can be outside the country and then be delivering electronic services in Nigeria. I mean, let's say, for example, DSTV could be somewhere outside our country, but the DSTV is being used here through satellite and they're earning money, making profit, but you may not be paying enough tax because it is a prima facie. If you can also have somebody that comes into Nigeria and then do service and bugger off and then pay tax, that's mode 2. Then you have mode 3, where you have come in here, you establish here, and then you are doing the business here and you're paying. They have opened up to get more taxes from all other modes of doing business with non-resident Nigerians. Then you come to administration of tax. They've also increased emphasis on automation. Lagos State is a shining example of how a state could earn more money by IGR using automation. So let's do that with FIRS. Let me and you just go to the computer and declare what you want to pay and then pay it and then get your receipt from there. Don't have middlemen in it, and see how revenue is going to shoot up.
Thank you very much. Another question has to do with the incessant fuel crisis that we have in the country. What is your take on this? How do you think this is affecting the presentation you have made? Because when you look at where there is no fuel, there's shortage of fuel, or there's no supply of fuel, movement is restricted and thereby affecting businesses. What do you think?
Well, I mean, this is a temporary challenge, okay? It is avoidable, but it has happened. It's a temporary thing. It doesn't think it's going to last more than 3 weeks or 1 month. But you can't compare that to the asymmetric warfare going on, where so many local governments have been sacked and 3 million people are living in an IDP camp. I mean, you can't compare those. So we know what the temporary issues are. We know that we have to urge an NNPC to be more cautious in the way it is. Now a private company, you have to be more responsible and more cautious and be more consultative. You are dealing with companies that are quoted in the stock market that can sue you for reputational damage if they think that what you have calling the name you are calling them is not true. And then you're probably not going to add any more than to cause more problem for yourself. So, and they can all put QCs and SANS to go and take you to court, and then you're a private company, and they could press charges against you. So it's no longer the business as usual. It's no longer like government. No. You are now a private company. So take it easy, so that you don't ruffle too much edges. Now, this situation is temporary, so I think it will go away, and I don't think that it should be a major cause for concern.
Yes, our chairman wants to have one question. And after his question, we'll probably be closing the program. I want to believe that you can share your contacts with us, both email and phone number, that members can reach you in the event that they have further questions to ask.
Excellent. Yeah, the chairman can share. You can share my email address. It's kennethife@gmail.com.
All right.
Okay.
You
Yeah,
can
the
share
chairman
that.
wants to ask you
Because
a
I like
question
to
now.
work. I like to work with this community because we're all doing the same thing, educating people. And then if we are going to be committed to educating our people, we have to be evidence-based, show them the evidence. And so that you can remove the impact of political opinions and, in social science, you don't actually have one exact answer, but at least the fact is the fact. So let's put out the fact out there, and people may differ on how they interpret that fact, rather than conceal the fact and then, buy into emotions. And that's not going to help us that much.
All right, sir. Maybe before the question of our chairman, there is an area when you were making your presentation, you said, please don't quote me. I will appreciate if you can just make, send a sentence or so, or something in that area where you don't want you to be quoted.
No, I have removed that. I've said you can quote anything on that paper. I was only trying to explain to you that it was my personal judgment on how I grouped, not concentrate. That many of these things can be grown in all parts of the country. But what we are saying is that areas of comparative advantage.
All right.
You can group, if you go to the south, go to Edo State, there are pineapple zones. There are certain agroecological zones for particular crops where you can grow pineapple in Edo State, in Cross River, in Enugu, certain areas where you just drop them, they will grow and yield multiple times. But it's punishment to just carry that pineapple and go to the heart of the desert and it will grow, but it may not grow as much. You will need a lot of water to give to it. So I'm just saying many things can grow all over the country. We're talking about where you have comparative advantage, where the agroecology permits it to do much, much better, and you can do it competitively.
Thank you, sir. Chairman, sir.
There's one question here. Can I respond to it? Somebody said that I need to draw a distinction between guaranteeing a micro loan and securing it by, what was the other one? Collateral. When you want to use collateral, can you imagine? You're asking somebody who is borrowing 200,000 naira to do 1 hectare of rice. You're asking him for collateral. This man is in the village. First of all, banks don't want land as collateral. If the land, if you're ever going to give them land, they want it to be in the city, not in the village. The 1 hectare of land they are getting is going to go and get valuation for it. You call somebody to come and value a piece of land, it costs you more than the 200,000 you want to borrow. And then when you value, the bank will tell you that they want clean title. Clean title means that it may cost you about 6% of the value of the property just to get a clean title and get, so I mean, it's too much. So, and that's why they don't want collateral in this. But having said that, you may still need somebody to be a guarantor. If your brother that is a civil servant or somebody or something, just to say, to charge me if he doesn't pay, that kind of thing. So that's why we don't want to go heavy on this guy, because we know we can get the money back. So, and they know that if you plant it, you must produce something, and there's insurance. So, but when the chips are down and they force the bank against the wall, of course, they will now say, okay, the man that guaranteed him, I've only collected 100,000 out of these 200,000 we lent to him, plus some interest. So can you help us with it? And that is the man that will bring pressure, final pressure to the guy that guarantee. Say, why are you allowing me to go into this nonsense? Don't go and pay these people, please. And then they may pay another 500, and then later you can sort out the balance. But that's sort of thing. And then also the one that works well is when you have a cross guarantee. If there are 100 people in this cooperative and the 100 guarantee the 100, come on, I'm seeing you and your farm. I have paid, 90 people have paid, and then these 10 people are giving us stories. They know you're all together in the same place. So they're going to call you people that say, look, stop this nonsense. You're going to go and pay these people. I saw you harvested your crops. Go and pay them so that we can get money for the next season, for the dry season. And pressure will come. And then we'll go and pay.
Thank you, sir. Our chairman wants to ask a question. Can you go ahead?
Okay. It is good afternoon.
Oh, good afternoon.
Not too long, the central bank sent out a circular introducing the evaluator and invoicing for for exporters.
Sorry, I didn't get that.
After that, we are seeing this RT200 program. And we know that the House of Representatives asked CBN to hold the e-invoicing program. So do you think all these initiatives are enough to induce export back their dollars? Are they enough? Thank you.
Oh my God, the thing was breaking. I don't know if there's anybody that had your question that can just relay the question to me because it was breaking. Is there any other person that had the questions well to relate them to me? Oh dear. Hello.
Hello, Prof.
Yeah. Is there any person that can relay your question to me because you were breaking and I couldn't hear the question?
He's going to talk to you now.
Can you hear me better now?
I can hear you now. Yes.
Okay, I said that when the CBN recently introduced the e-evaluator and e-invoicing for exporters, the House of Representatives asked CBN to halt it because the exporters and the importers are complaining. So now we have the RT200 program. My question is, do you think these initiatives are enough to induce exporters to bring back their dollars in exchange for Naira? Thank you.
Well, I think there are two big questions in here. First of all, the National Assembly are representing people and their constituents are individuals and companies. So when people complain, they expect them to relay their concern. So I don't see anything wrong with them asking. But the thing is, there are two schools here. The customs are going to say, the custom does all the things they do because they think that you're under invoicing and don't want to pay the full duty. So they go around chasing you around from corner to post, But then you have on the other side, the CBN is actually worrying about because under invoicing is the concern of the customs, but our own is over invoicing. The bank may well be concerned about over invoicing for the purpose of raking foreign exchange and then carrying out arbitrage on it and then selling the thing. So they're looking at two ends. The two ends of this whole thing, all right? So that's what I say to people who are saying, oh, that is going to add another burden on importers or exporters. They are now asking them importers to now go and add another system, another bureaucracy. They are all at different ends of it. This guy is supplying you foreign exchange. We know what is going on the Forex area, that there are arbitrage opportunities. And if you are putting overinflating your invoice by 50%, it means that you're actually going to get that 50% extra and go and sell it in the black market. So they're essentially defending their constituencies, their mandate. So I don't see any conflict in those. But in terms of, I think the assembly should engage with CBN rather than telling them to stop what they want to do so that they can explain that very well. Then the second part of your question, hey God, I was going to remember the second part now. I've actually forgotten the second.
They are RT200.
RT200.
Yeah, correct. The RT200 actually is not really about over-invoicing or stuff like that. It is about adding value to what we are already producing and selling as raw materials, adding value so that we can get a lot more money out of this and create more employment here. I mean, the first thing that you are going to say is, why the hell are we still importing petrol when we have 4 refineries here that they should have been doing that? So if you go to the refinery and they have license for 75 modular refineries, each modular refinery costs 35 billion naira, $75 million to build 20,000 barrels a day. And the money you spend, imagine, if you're going to spend 3 trillion, 3 trillion will give you 80 to 100 modular refineries. I can't believe it. And that will be, you have to borrow the money and you pay it back. But the other one is that you are burning that money and you will never come back. So I don't understand. I do not understand this. I don't understand the logic behind that. So the RT200 is adding value to what we are doing to create more jobs and then generate more revenue. And you know that once we have this order of revenue hitting the shores, I can tell you, the central bank is the first that will say to you, come on, you guys want to float the Naira, you can go anywhere you like. And then when you have that dollar coming in, you can actually see appreciation of our currency. Our currency will reverse from 415 Naira to $1, starts heading back to 200 Naira to $1, back to 150 Naira to $1, because we have the currency that we need. And then, you know, it's going to be a different story. And then the bank can now collect all the money that is collectively getting and use it to service the debt of federal government and use it to pay for the essentials, you know, what they call the invincibles, the school fees and the medical things and all that stuff. And then let the banks get into, you know, in London, when I order my goods from Taiwan or China, I don't go to Bank of England, Central. No, I just go to any commercial bank and say to them, I need $100,000. And then they arrange the thing. Some of them will say, when do you need it? I say, I need it in 2 weeks' time or in 1 month time. They will do spot rate for me. They sell. The bank sells to me. I haven't seen anybody taking me to central bank or fin this from A, this from that. The banks deal with this. And that's the position we want to move towards with all this RT200.
Okay. Thank you very much, Prof. We have a whole lot of questions that have not been answered that are on the screen. But because of our time, we want to plead with our members that for all these questions, we can send it to his email. And like he has promised, he's going to respond to all those questions and we can form our story from those questions. We appreciate all our members for their time. We appreciate Prof once again for his time and a detailed presentation that he has made today. Our promise to you is that we'll continue to engage you even after this event, and we also make use of these materials you have sent to us. And I'm sure that you will appreciate the fact that we have done justice to what you have given us when you get to see those stories come out. But please, I want to plead with our members that rather than misquoting the Prof in anything that we may have heard or seen, let us just recall back to Prof, because we are going to be sharing his email, we are going to be sharing his contact. We can ask questions that we are in doubt of so that he can make clarification as against we making presentations that are not authentic, because we are talking about figures here. In the event that a figure is distorted, then we make nonsense of our presentation. I appreciate everyone. I specifically appreciate our chairman, Mr. Chima Titus, who had worked tirelessly, and his other colleagues to ensure that this event come to light. It's not easy, I can say. It's not easy getting the Prof to make this presentation, and it's not easy getting all members to participate in this event. We appreciate you very well. We appreciate you for your time. We appreciate you for your participation. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you. Such a pleasure for me. Thank you. My pleasure. Jeff.
So, we thank God.